Luther awoke to the taste of blood in his mouth. His right side was throbbing, and he reached with his left arm to feel where his right should have been. Someone had bandaged him. He felt the hard wood beneath. They had laid him on the kitchen table. Still weak, he tried to get up. He needed something to drink, to wash that awful taste out of his mouth. Having to drink human blood was already bad enough, but that taste wasn't human. Gasping and panting, Luther sat up. His head was throbbing in unison with the wound. That beast had torn off his arm and stripped away parts of his flesh down the side. From the feeling of it, his ribs must have been visible. Not giving himself time, the vampire got to his feet, but the exhaustion was still too much, and he had to quickly hold on to a chair to avoid falling. By the time he had urged his body to the cupboard with glasses and bottles, he was covered in sweat and shaking. "No, Luther, you can't walk like that." Okuluk spoke from behind in a gentle voice. The demon must have heard the ruckus. Luther ignored him. He was frustrated by his own weakness, by his helplessness. His memories of the night turned fuzzy after the tearing away of his arm. The demon quickly steadied him when Luther's world started spinning once again. "What did you give me?" "Chicken," Okuluk answered, intimidated by the harsh tone. "Did you bandage me?" Luther asked, softer as an apology. "I did." Okuluk guided Luther back to the table and urged him to sit down. Understanding the attempt, he gave the vampire his glass and filled it with whiskey. "Thank you. A physician couldn't have done it better." The statement seemed to ease the strangely soft-natured demon. Luther took a sip from his glass. "Chicken, you said?" "I'm sorry. Wolpe had the idea. She said your kind can feed on animals too." "Yeah." He took another sip to wash away the bloody taste. "What would I do without her?" Okuluk went to check the bandages. The bleeding had finally stopped, but it was covered by still fragile tissue, and the healing process would take a week at least with the current regeneration speed. "I'll have to hunt to quicken it. Animal blood keeps me alive, but it's not helping my strength." Okuluk seemed to have heard the resignation in Luther's voice, for he shot the vampire a puzzled look. Luther wasn't fond of drinking blood. It was a disgusting habit forced onto him by fate. He tended to keep the body count low for his safety as well as because of his personal dislike. He could go weeks without blood, yet in instances like that one, it was essential. If he wanted to fight that thing again in the near future, he would have to get strong quickly. Trying to distract himself from the unpleasant thoughts, he turned to the demon. "What was going on with you back there? Your face was blank." "I don't know," Okuluk uttered, wrapping new bandages around the vampire's chest and torso. "I saw something. Angels. I heard heaven." The demon's face showed nothing but deep thought as he tried to understand what he was talking about. "Angel telepathy?" Luther asked sarcastically. "I didn't know something like that was possible. Rayfillin must be in Blackwood's house. It's the only explanation I have." "Is that your angel friend?" "Yes." Luther noticed how faint red discolored the demon's cheeks. Was he in love with an angel? "You aren't really a typical demon, are you?" "I'm as much a demon as you are a vampire, and I like violence as much as you like blood." "That wasn't necessary," Luther muttered, getting a smile from the demon. He got the message. They both weren't the typical specimen of their kind. When Wolpe returned, she carried a hare. It wasn't dead, but the werewolf had knocked it out somehow. "Feast," she only said when she held it out to Luther. "You won't get better by starving," she added when the vampire hesitated. She wore a green blouse and a yellow skirt reaching to her bare feet. She loved these kinds of clothes. It made her feel free. Suits were like society to her, forbidding, full of rules and cut off from nature. But she wouldn't leave him, no matter how grey the streets outside would turn. She would dream of a life somewhere far away in a green valley when the call for freedom got too strong. Atsushi was similar in his wishes for the future. Luther would love to give them that, but only the three of them would be easy prey for others. Humans, vampires, or a creature like the one they'd just encountered. He had known times where one could easily find a lone valley and never encounter humans, but times had changed, and the ownership of limited land was safer than the wildlife in distant lands. Having feasted on the hare, Luther gave Vulpa a few instructions for the humans working for him. She would have to lead them until he would be capable of remaining on his feet. A possible weak phase would alert his enemies who were trying to take over his business. Feeling too tired to sit, he laid back on the table. "Would you close the curtains for me, Okuluk?" he asked the demon when he felt sunlight on his skin. "Don't you sleep in a coffin?" The demon wondered, with darkening the room. "No, I don't sleep in a coffin. I only need a dark spot. Sunlight is necessary deadly, but it takes extra strength to ignore it. Strength I don't have right now." The paralyzing pain made resting a challenge. Enduring it with stubbornness, Luther managed to drift away. "My wings are fine, Vulpa," Luther heard Okuluk's distraught voice from the next room. Vulpa was obviously very fond of the demon. It always showed in her compassionate behavior when she liked someone. Feeling stronger, the vampire got up and slumped into the other room. Okuluk's shoulder was badly torn and his stomach showed a large hole. The thin, bloody marks where the creature had parted the wing was the smallest injury. "Your wings," Luther uttered, causing the demon to turn around to him. At once he wrapped his wings around his body as if he wanted to hide from the world. "What about them?" "They are not demonic." Okuluk looked as if Luther had just asked him for the solution of a mathematical equation. "But they are my wings." "You still have feathers." "I like my feathers. I'm quite proud I managed to protect that many from the hellfire." Vulpa sat on the sofa and only shot Luther an amused glance. She seemed to be familiar with the childish innocence of the demon. "But they are not threatening, respect demanding, you know?" "I don't want to be threatening," he defended himself. "You are a demon, for crying out loud. Act like one." Luther tossed his arm into the air, becoming painfully aware of his injury. "I do act like one," Okuluk responded calmly. "Is hell populated by twats?" "It's populated by demons, but you know that, don't you?" "That simpleton drives me mad." Okuluk watched in puzzlement while Vulpa giggled amused. Tossing the demon a shirt, she got up to look at Luther's condition. The vampire glimpsed an old scar on Okuluk's chest. He smirked. That fellow had fought after all. "What kind of beast can hurt even a demon?" "I had hoped to ask you that same question," Okuluk returned. The discouraging answer told Luther that none of them knew what they were up against. "I'll be damned," he cursed, sitting down on the sofa. "It's not the only problem," Vulpa took the word. "Your gang won't listen to me. Not all of them." Luther rubbed his eyes with his one hand and sighed. He had made them listen to him, and had hoped that would be enough to ensure discipline. But some newcomers always had to test the waters. He looked outside. The sky was darkening. "Let me rest a bit. I'll deal with it." "Do you have a library here?" Okuluk asked, with his eyes distant, indicating a mind far away. "Vulpa can show ya. My own books won't be of much help here." Luther got up before asking a question he should have asked long ago already. "I wonder, Why don't we just ask Lucifer to solve our problem? The demon took a moment before answering, and Luther caught himself pondering if his friend was making up a lie. He doesn't approve of me looking for a villain. I entered the earthly plane through luck. I can't ask him, or Michael. In fact, I have to be careful to not be found before I have saved her. I see, the vampire acknowledged the honesty. That makes things a bit more complicated. What do you mean? This thing hurt you. It might even hurt the devil now that I think about it. We need to kill it somehow. How? Luther smiled when some vague plan took form in his head. There are other ancient creatures in this world, other than angels and demons. I once heard a story about a dragon with the ability to poison the world. Perhaps you should start there. It was early morning when Luther drove to the place where his employees used to do their business. The sun was still gentle, yet he felt it bearing down on him despite the glasses and fedora. He made an effort to seem at ease, but the wound was still hurting. There was no other way. He had to hunt. Tonight. He wore the long overcoat around his shoulders to conceal the missing arm. He felt strangely vulnerable, and he didn't like it. Luther entered the room filled with cigarette smoke and men in suits. I heard that one of you didn't find it necessary to obey the one I put in charge while I was busy. The vampire breathed into the room with a voice full of cold confidence. The men stopped amidst their tasks to listen. A few last pence clinked on the table where someone had just emptied another box to count the finances. Luther was doing good business delivering services and goods through Liverpool's harbour. He had built himself a life with care and caution and the right maneuver at the right time. Above all, he valued discretion and loyalty as the foundation of his business. He scanned every face with his penetrating stare. Even if he wore glasses, most averted their gaze after a few seconds once they believed to feel his eyes on them. He started to pace through the room when still no one answered. If I put someone in charge in my stead, then you follow that instruction. I take no command from a woman. She ain't even British. Luther's hearing identified the speaker at once, without even having to turn. Drawing one of his guns, he turned and pointed it at the young man's head. He was a cocky one. The vampire could see that clearly. Luther said nothing as everyone held their breath, the guns still pointing at the youth. None of them knew what he was thinking, what he would do. They had thought him to have grown weak, disinterested or perhaps old, only because he didn't pay these maggots a visit every 2 days. They had miscalculated here. Don't, Joe, he ain't joking. The moment the other man had whispered the words to his cocky friend, Luther hit him with the gun's butt. Bloody right, I ain't joking, he uttered before booming through the room. You work for me. You follow my rules. Joe looked like a defeated young lion who had tried to take the leader's throne. Next time, I'll shoot ya, boy. Luther gave the other man on the ground a soft kick. And yeah, he waited until the man looked back at him. There are no turncoats in my business. You either serve me or you oppose me, but you don't trim your sails after wind. Dismissing his man, the vampire went round to check a few things, the tidiness of the finances and any changes in the current customers. Goods were in order and nothing seemed to be amiss. Due to his unusual lifestyle, Luther was relying a lot on a man named Oscar. He was a good and loyal friend, apart from the fact that Luther would never be able to reveal himself to the mortal. Long years of working with one another had built trust between the two. Luther was still the one at the top and making the final decisions, but Oscar was often enough the one to listen to the vampire's doubts and uncertainties concerning the business. They both had started from the muddy streets, and they both agreed that the business should someday be a legal one. He had, in fact, managed to secure customers for legal goods as well, but it was a small branch and needed more time to evolve, so it could provide for the expenses. "You shouldn't have been that harsh to the boys," Oscar remarked when Luther had notified him that he was doing a good job. "You know how it is. I'm their boss. I show weakness, someone else will take over. I hope we can leave that kind of life behind someday." The vampire looked over his shoulder, the hand already opening the door to the busy larger room full of people. A slight chuckle was all he could give his friend. If Luther would still have been human, he would have regarded Oscar as a brother with the many similarities they shared concerning their upbringing. The boundary of not being mortal, however, cut him off from such deeper relationships. Eager to get out of the crowd, he walked through the equally busy streets. Getting into his car, he took a moment to breathe. The wound was throbbing again, and he believed to feel red bandages. "You shouldn't exhaust yourself," Wilbur suddenly sat next to him. "I had to. You were gone." Urging him to switch places, she took the wheel. "I can smell your blood." The sun was beating down harder now, sending the vampire into a slight trance. Luther would have liked to struggle into the house on his own, but Wilbur just took him by the arm to steady him. It was the sudden click before a bullet was fired that made him drag the werewolf in front of him to shield her. The bullet hit him in the back, but he quickly turned around to shoot the man in the face. From the corner of his eyes, he saw Kuluk standing in the doorway. A bang sounded, which was followed by the man toppling backwards to the ground. The demon stared in shock at the ferocity displayed by the vampire. Luther didn't have the luxury to care about that. Seeing another man scramble from the cover he had taken behind a bush, the vampire followed. He took the man by the shoulder, turned him around, and sank his own knee into the attacker's stomach. "Who sent ya?" he asked the mortal, who only spit in front of his feet. Luther showed a smirk and pushed the barrel of his gun into the man's mouth. "Listen to me here, Paul," he snarled. "It's very simple. I can blow your brains out right now, and I won't mourn nor regret it. Got that?" The man nodded, a faint pallor crept into his face. "Who sent ya?" The man admitted to be part of an Italian family whose business had clashed with Luther's own. They wanted to get rid of their competition without a big fuss. The vampire sent the man back with an invitation to the one who had wanted him dead. They would meet in an alley all too familiar to the vampire at midnight. By the time he finally entered the kitchen, he was staggering heavily. Kuluk at once tended to the wound. Of course, the bandages were drenched with new blood. Wilbur's nose was never wrong. "You need more blood. I'll go find something," the werewolf informed the two before leaving. "Aren't you afraid your enemies will try to take her hostage?" The demon voiced his worries. "Wilbur knows how to fight." He smirked at his friend. Kuluk didn't return the gesture. He was still thinking about the dead man. Luther was old enough to see it in someone's face. "You think I'm a monster?" he asked the demon, who responded with a guilty expression. "No, I have to be indifferent to death." He spoke in a soft voice. "They all will leave me someday." He was careful with his emotions. He usually guarded them closely, but Kuluk had saved him already. He had given the vampire no reason not to be trusted. Vampires are tainted human beings. We gain the powers of the night in exchange for our mortality, our humanity. Even Wilbur will age and die, while I lost that privilege. The demon said nothing. He only listened. It made Luther miss Atsushi all the more. The kitsune had been a close member of his little family. He owed him to do all he could to save him, even if it meant discarding his humanity for a while. The fresh wind of the night blew through Luther's clothes as he sat on the roof. He had switched the expensive suit for a plain cotton shirt, pants, and a long cloak. His victim was just entering the alley, and, of course, he had brought backup. If the man wanted to just shoot the vampire, or if he would threaten to shoot him, would Luther not cooperate? He didn't know. Nor did it matter. Silent as a shadow, he jumped into the alley below, landing behind the mobster who wanted to kill him. The moment the man turned around with a startled "What?" it was already too late. Luther sank his teeth into the neck, using his one hand to muffle the cry. He felt reborn as the blood of the man vitalized him. His primal instinct forced him to go on, to take more. His senses at once became enhanced, as it should be for his kind. He could hear the wings of the moth in the dark. He could hear water gushing somewhere below him. He could smell the two men waiting for a possible sign of their boss. The night felt alive and refreshing all of a sudden. His wound, too, felt better as the healing process was accelerated. It was his life and his curse alike. With shame, he felt the delight of it. Letting go of the dead man, he wiped his mouth. Old wrath cooked inside when he remembered the last time he had enjoyed it like this. The two men barely noticed the vampire before he ripped out the heart of the one and bit the throat of the other just to feel it. And he wondered when the deed was done. Had he ever remained human after his change? Or was he just fooling himself, clinging to an illusion that had died decades ago?